Welcome to another edition of the Uncle Greg Show and Podcast. On today's episode, we'll be talking once again with the brothers about the negative impact and influences that social media is having on the black community. So let's get to it. Good evening and welcome once again to another episode of the Uncle Greg Show and Podcast. I'm joined once again by my brothers, Roger, Ross, and Kent. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, gentlemen. How you doing there?
Yeah, how's everybody's week go?
Going good.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a lot to talk about. So much going on. So it's just,
That's for sure. It's like, it's a never-ending battle for us, whether we're aware of it or not.
Right, it is.
Yeah, but as I spoke with you guys earlier and talked about it, and I already put out a solo podcast in regard to this being Mental Health Awareness Month. I thought it was important for us to focus on some of the things that are happening in our community. And as I said, I had put out a podcast previously in regards to the suicides of Chesley Chris and Alana Miller. How the two special young ladies that were gone before their time. And spoke a little bit about how these young ladies were suffering evidently from depression for quite a while, or at least in one case, it was possibly influenced by social media, which is the bigger issue that we're going to discuss this evening. But I wanted to touch on that and just get you guys' thoughts and input on, these two tragic events.
Yeah.
I
just read it. That's sad. That's difficult.
Well, with me, this hits pretty close to home because, one of my good friends back home, committed suicide at an early age. There was another close friend who has supposedly committed suicide. That was pretty similar to the young lady who was Miss USA, but there's some issues around that I think were kind of foggy. But long story short, this clip hits close to home with me. I know mental health, mental awareness, so to speak, your mental stability is so important, and we all need to pay attention. We need to check on each other, ask questions, because, you're looking at, these two young ladies, they had such a bright future, both of them, one being 19. I mean, you're just getting started. The other young lady who was a Miss USA, intelligent, beautiful, and again, it's mind-boggling, but it's something we need to continue to discuss, continue to be aware, and, do our best to check on people, ask people questions, making sure they're all right. Because in these two instances, we can't assume that they were okay.
I mean, Lana, just watching her post, a few things jumped out at me. And like Greg previously said, there were signs that she was struggling. There had to have been. I mean, she, for one example, she mentioned tearing her ACL. If you're mentioning that in a post where you're about to end it, that goes to one of the items I think that makes it problematic with social media these days. That disconnectedness that you may have. And one of the symptoms of that too is, believe it or not, decreased muscle tone and I don't know her background, how much time she spent on social media, but it can be harsh if you're comparing yourself to those that you see.
Right.
And that stuck out to me when she said, okay, so you tore your ACL. That could be painful. Maybe you were expecting to do something physically that you were looking forward to, but like I said before, if you go, and I'm not saying out of your way to mention that in a post like this, that must have been something that was extremely important to her too. Maybe right. She thought, because she was so bogged down and stuff, whatever, she lost that aspect that, even though it sounds cliche, it is true. Sound mind, sound body, sound mind. The most important part of it, of course, is your relationship with others. And it sounded like she had become disconnected, or at least she felt so. And those are some of the dangers, I think, of social media, because it's artificial. You can't replace human connectivity, especially with those who care about you most, with a post. Greg is going to talk more on this.
Yeah.
Since he's delved deeper into the psychology behind all of this, because at some point during this podcast, we also want to get into how this all started, starting, with, I know there was MySpace and those places before that, but especially with the one that hit the ground and it just blew up everything. And that's Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know the name signs, but
right.
But that's my take on it right now. It's something that's hit close to home for me too, because I've got young kids and grandkids in the family who are going through some things right now. And I think part of it too is, what they see or have seen on social media.
Right.
And that's why it's so important, especially with young girls starting out, that, you want to give them the freedom to explore, but some places aren't a good place to go.
Right.
Right. Now what I forgot is they're too young to understand that, and then to place yourself in that position, in that mode where your self-esteem is so affected by it that you decide you don't even want to go on.
That's true.
Let me piggyback a little bit off what you said, Ross. I mean, yeah, I think it all tied together. First off, all right, she tied her ACL. But then in her very next statement, she says she's nearly failing all her classes. Yep. So if she was on cheerleading squad, she gets hurt, she fails her classes, those are all major issues, especially to a freshman, first year of college. That's a lot to take on. And we don't know what type of support, if any, she was getting from her peers, her coach, the institution. I mean, those are other questions that need to be asked. But, she might have lost her spot on the team being hurt and failing the classes.
Yeah.
So, did anybody reach out to her? Did anybody talk to her? As it appears, evidently not.
Well, it's easy, and you guys both touched on some things I want to come back to. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback this. It's unfortunate, her loss of life, but also to the people that loved her. She mentioned her mother, she mentioned her grandfather, who was, from what it indicated, he was deceased since he wasn't around to tell her it's not worth it, as she said. We talk about this being a post, and this was a suicide note. You have to really think about a person choosing a social media platform to post a suicide note. That tells you how strong of an influence that had, at least in some part of her life, that she felt like this was the best outlet for her to post this note. But I want to go back up a couple of things you guys touched on earlier. First and foremost is that in the Black community, mental health issues have always been, in most cases, a taboo subject that we don't discuss. Mm-hmm. And, it's something that we have to come out of. And I believe slowly that we are, and we need to come out of it, especially now, because, I talk to other people in our age range from our generations, and they are all in agreement that these kids from these generations, they're not built like we are.
No.
They don't handle stress and, rejection and other things the way we handle it. I guess because we came through things tougher, just like our parents came through things tougher than us. But we at least inherited that resiliency to some degree. Now you're seeing these young kids, and if you pay attention to them, especially when they post on social media, they get upset over the smallest things. And they get excited by the smallest things. You get excited. I got 10,000 likes. Big deal.
Right.
That's all shallow. And it's false. Right. But it has a lot of influence. It has a lot of strength. It has a lot of pull because these kids use this or rely on it for validation.
Bingo.
Yep, that's it.
Word. That's exactly it.
And because they rely on this, and Ross, you hit it perfectly, is nothing can replace human connectivity. The social interaction between people on a physical level, not over the computer, not over the cell phone. It's that one-on-one or that socialization process. Their socialization process is entirely different than ours. Right. And even when they're in the presence of other people, they communicate just like they're on Facebook or on social media platforms.
Notice that? It's like, wow.
And this is why I guess, and boy, I am so glad I'm out of that dating dynamic. Because the way these kids deal with each other on a relationship level, I talk to my daughters about this all the time, and it's just incredible. It's just these kids are just I don't want to say unprepared, but it's just a different world, and that's really, and it can really lead to some dangerous outcomes. This being one of the examples.
Well, let me say this, Greg, and I agree 100%. Number one, it starts at home. Okay, it starts in the home. And I know, some of the things that this young lady posted, but there are too many young people out there. They use social media to, number one, create this life for themselves that they have to be validated by other people for whatever reason. Maybe they're not getting this validation at home. They're insecure. They're not getting attention at home. Secondly, too many people post stuff to impress, to, like you said, get 10,000 likes, to let people know how great they are. In actuality, a lot of people do things on social media because they're also insecure.
Exactly.
It's there's nothing wrong with sharing information, whether you share a common hobby, interests, things of that sort. But too much of this social media is used for people who are insecure, that need validation, that need attention, that are trying to impress people who really don't care about you.
Exactly, Kent. They don't care about you.
It's nice that if you can encourage and support and offer advice to those who actually seek it. I've seen things on social media where you can, assist people with different things. Okay. But, so you had a trip to here and you're hobnobbing with the rich and famous. That's nice. But too many people don't have that opportunity, and don't try to compare yourselves to people who do have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. Again, it's showing off. So, it's gone too far. I think suicide has always been a problem, even in our community. Again, it just was never talked about.
Right.
And maybe, I know about it because this affected me and some very close people to me. So I've always known about it. I've always been a person who says, hold on, we need to check on people. We need to reach out. And, the old school way is, what do? We pick up the phone. We call people, even if it's periodically. All of us, we live in different states, different cities. But what do? if we don't hear from each other in a while, we check on each other.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's the problem with it too. I with some of the kids around me and some of the parents, it's almost a discipline thing. If you want a child to grow up with good work ethics, you give them chores when they're kids. That shapes who they are later on, And the analogy is that on social network now, if you notice, there are no more grammar rules.
Hold it, Ross. I want to say this too, because I hate to cut you off, but you said there are no grammar rules, and I'll let you consider it. It's not just grammar rules on social media. If you read the average news story that come out of these news outlets, the grammar is terrible.
I don't know. It go like this.
Exactly.
There's no coherent thoughts. So with no coherent thoughts, that leads to a lessening of the ability to deduce by reasoning. So now you're left open to the influences of those outside of you. This is a prime example. My daughters were being honored a few years ago by one of the sororities. And we're in this meeting place. And the subject matter came up about mentors for your child. And now this is a room full of people, and I'm listening. And I hear all these testimonials. Not once did I hear a parent say that the influence of my child begins with me. They kept talking about all of these other people who they thought would be good to influence their kids. And I thought of Charles Barkley. I put a basketball in the hoop. You need to raise your kids, and when you decide that you're so busy doing whatever it is that you're doing, and especially in this day and age with social media and the effects of it, and you're not paying attention to what your child is doing, now you have a child who's grown up, who's got some difficulties with adulthood because everything was quick and easy. And satiation is something that does not now involve any deductive reasoning. So your thoughts now are just as quick. You can be just as quickly satisfied as you are not satisfied, and you're reacting to everything. Like Kent and both of you, well, also you, Greg, how many likes did I get? Or how many people unliked me? That's devastating to me. Without giving any thoughts anywhere past that. There are going to be some people who agree with what it is and are involved and enjoy what it is that you're saying. But you also have to deduce that the opposite is going to be true too. How do you process that? And if you get that out of balance, what do you think this is going to lead to? Now, go ahead, Greg, because I know you're going to touch on this grammar thing. That's one small little tidbit, one little thing that nobody thinks about that can lead to a larger problem.
Right. And, I was reading an article this week. This HR director was talking about how she was interviewing some of these younger people, candidates for jobs, and how they couldn't write a complete sentence with the proper spelling of words because they're so used to abbreviating everything and using these text and social media abbreviations for everything. It just doesn't translate into the real world. And exactly. I've noticed that. As I said, man, I'll read newspaper and I always take a screenshot when I look at a title or a newspaper article with improper grammar. Yeah. I mean, they use the wrong tense. They misspell. How the heck do you screw up a newspaper article with spell check? But they don't utilize. They skip right over and they just keep on typing. But
remember, you can add a word to your spell check library so they can put LOL in there.
And that's true. That's very true,
and save it. So,
that's a good point. But I want to say this. Go back when we talk about we checked on each other. We not only check on each other, we know each other to the level that we can tell when something's wrong, even if we're not ready to admit it.
Right.
Because of that connectivity. You have that level of empathy that I can feel something's not right.
Right.
So, but with them, and we also have because of that social connectivity, we have the comfort to know that amongst us, it's okay to be not okay.
Right.
And that is exactly. And that is something that needs to spread, because when people are having issues with depression and, other issues related to mental health, they need to know. The whole community needs to know, and beyond the community, I mean the entire country, if not the entire world, that it's okay not to be okay.
Because that's real.
That's real. And
Very
what's
real.
going on in the world and just what life throws at us, it affects us. We can't be happy, smiley, go lucky, everything rainbows and sunshine all the time. If you are, something's wrong with you.
Yep, something is wrong.
Right.
So, we need to get that message out that it's okay not to be okay, and you should be able to talk about it. You should feel comfortable to talk about it. Now, circling back to the main topic for tonight, well, that being the negative impact that social media has. And like you said earlier, Ross, especially young girls, because it seems like, young boys, they're being impacted by it too. Yes. But these young girls, I think, they suffer, their self-esteem gets hit. I want to say at a higher level, because girls can be really cruel toward one another.
Yeah.
And, I think it does far more damage to their self-esteem than men. Men, even young men tend to be more confrontational. And don't get me wrong, it's not that women aren't confrontational, but some women, they can't take that level of bullying, cyberbullying or abuse, and it really damages their self-esteem. And that's all because they are so highly invested in these media platforms that, as you said, don't care about them. Yep. I don't care how many Facebook friends you got; they're not your friends.
Right?
They're not real. It's like Bitcoin; it doesn't exist.
Right? Only in the imagination.
Oh, hey, Rod, you got your hand up. What do you want to say?
I want to add that with the young ladies, it's the poor example of what they see on reality TV with the grown women.
Right.
You have a lot of grown women walking around with a 12-year-old mindset because they still have childhood trauma that they have not faced yet. And oftentimes they seek these vices, such as adding additional hair pieces and extensions and altering their physical appearance to make it appear as though everything is just fine. They think that as much modification that they can do to the external will give them some form of peace. And that's why the unlikely nature of what happens with the poor example that they saw growing up. And they didn't have any, and I wouldn't say it doesn't even have to be with the male influence. It's exactly what has been ingrained into their head, because now they're competing and comparing because they got to get as many followers as necessary for whatever reason. And it's like, what do you necessarily need people to follow you for? What is it that you are in need of so desperately? I remember I hear Dr. Tony Evans, and I mentioned this before probably, in reference to how when you see the number of outlets that they seek for getting as many likes and validation, that is because of the fact that it's a cry for help. And obviously it's unfortunate that this young lady, it was a cry for help, because normally in most cases, people tend to, if they're going to take their life, they don't mention anything. They leave a note. They don't post anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But I took the time to say, with her putting this information out, I said, somebody needs to get to her right away, because it was a last call for help versus people sitting idle and, oh, I'll be praying for you, feel better soon. I'm like, that's not enough. We have to go and meet people where they are and see to it, because so much toxicity is on social media, TV, a lot of the programming. And so much of that is deposited into our mindsets that we begin to get programmed that we have to try and keep up with everybody else. You can literally see the women out here in public TV, from the Kardashians to whomever. You see that nothing works out for them. Relationships, they go from one to the other. You see a multiplicity of all these athletes and musicians that can't seem to secure and land or keep the right person because they move on to the next. And it's unfortunate that this is all that they know. And if you tune out social media and get away from that and get back to the quality conversations of 2 people, 3 people sitting among each other like we're doing tonight, it's healthy to do those things, because you got to have an outlet besides the beauty salon, the barbershop, and parties. Because the funny thing is, what in the world you celebrating on the weekend? And you showing champagne glasses and partying up? But what is that you exactly celebrating? Yeah, we'll celebrate graduations, we'll celebrate birthday parties, milestones, you name it. But of course, at the same time, when you often see so much of what these young ladies spend their time on, is because they're trying to compare. And if they can't compare and compete and meet up to the levels of what's a facade, what they see, then that's where the self-esteem comes in. And if it's challenged, and then that's when, evil and principalities and things start speaking to you and saying, you're not this, you're not that. Right. Okay, go the extra mile. Right. That's why if you look at some of our renowned 90s stars, like for instance, Lil' Kim, she looks completely different compared to where she was 20-something years ago.
Yep.
And a number of other people who made these drastic changes because they never dealt with the inner child, because they can be 50 years of age, but there's a 10-year-old kid in there that's still dealing with trauma. And until we address that issue, they're going to continue to let their brokenness and going unresolved healing to manifest. And over time, we know that in the book of Genesis, Satan starts off as a serpent. In the Revelation, he's the 3-headed dragon or 7-headed dragon, whatever. Right. That thing boasts over time, and we don't catch that thing and cut it off early. Right. Cut it off the root, like Bishop T. Jake says, you got to cut it at the root. Right. It's going to continue to grow, and people need to stop being afraid to be transparent and say, hey, I got these issues, because it's not okay to not be okay. Right. What society has really poisoned and caused so many of our young people, but of course, a lot of it has delved into people our own age that's still in dealing with that stuff. Right, so, right. That comes back to what I said earlier about the taboo in our community about mental health issues. But I want to touch on something you said, Roger, is just not being enough. If you look at the last few sentences of her letter, she talks about that. She said, things that I am today, but they just aren't enough. She's talking about the things she's involved in. She says, I'm not enough. No. And you got to ask yourself, enough for who? Right. You only need to be enough for yourself and not worry about what everybody else is thinking about you. As long as you're enough for yourself and the Lord, that's all that matters, because the Lord always believes you're enough as you are, but Amen. You're so heavily influenced by this social media crap and these other negative influences, like you said, Roger, on TV, where you feel like you got to compare and compete. You're chasing something you're never going to catch.
Let me speak on this, and I think Roger, you hit a lot of great points. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Again, and Greg, you just said it. It's there. Who are they competing against? I've talked to many different fellas, different guys, our age, younger. These guys don't care about all this stuff these females are doing.
Sure don't.
From the hair to the eyelashes to all that, guys don't care. Guys want an attractive woman, but again, what's attractive to one may not be attractive to somebody else. But too many people are working on the outside, not working on the inside.
Yep. Okay. And you got your inside empty, man. That a lot of guys get turned off by that emptiness and that funny looking junk that's going on the inside. Go ahead.
Right. There was a guy. I think I might have mentioned this in one of our earlier podcasts this year. He was so anxious. He runs some show on YouTube called The Roommates, and he mentioned how he was so eager to get a date with an Instagram model because she was light skinned, she had everything. He was, man, I can't wait to go out with her, man. Oh my gosh. When she finally DM'd him and he DM'd him, he said, oh yeah, he gets finally the opportunity. They go out to dinner. She shows up. He was awestruck. He was just dribbling. He said he was drooling, whatever he was saying. Sat down. Within the first 30 seconds, she started to speak. And he said, this female is absolutely one of the dumbest women I've ever met. Like what's coming out of her mouth, it's about her, but you see a grown woman in front of you, but you think a 7-year-old is talking to you.
Right.
Yeah, but he was going out. He's going out with an Instagram model. What did he think he was going to talk about? Einstein's theory of relativity?
Right.
Right. So he knew at that moment, he dressed his transparency, said, fellas, never again. He said, beauty is only skin deep. And it's a facade. Because at the end of the day, when all that stuff comes off, you probably won't even recognize who they are. Exactly. Especially underneath.
Exactly.
And now, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
No, I was looking, I'm looking at this young lady's post, and, the more I read it, I just get more sad. But, I don't know the timing of, the post and when all the comments started coming in. But there's over almost 3,300 comments on here. Okay. Yeah. As soon as she hit the send button on this, who reached out to her? Yeah, and again, like you said, it's easy to be Monday morning quarterback, but who reached out to her? Did anybody, try to get in touch with her? Other cheerleaders, friends, family. I mean, yeah, her mom probably doesn't keep up with this stuff on social media, but all her other counterparts had to see this. So again, this is a concern that this young lady's had this kind of pain for this amount of time, and nobody actually sat down to check on her and talk to her and let her cry on their shoulders.
Right. And I mean, go ahead, Ross.
I see Fiddle Bang asked, "Is she okay?" at the bottom of the post.
Well, let me say this: when I pulled this post, at the top of it, it had said it had been posted 9 hours before. So, so that tells you these 32, like you said, Ken, almost 3,300 comments. 3,300 comments. This was approximately 9 hours after she posted.
See, and that's the problem with social media. When I read this, it looks like she's addicted. It's social media started out as a way to connect with our families and our friends. I get that, but now it seems like it's all rapidly becoming a compulsion. Even in here, I see it. Right. One of the first, and I bet when she got up in the morning, that was one of the first things that she did. She went and looked at her telephone, and probably was the last thing she looked at before she went to bed. Well, so it's subliminally influencing your brain. It's always
right.
And then you see those posts and stuff and those images, and you might think that it might be harmless and stuff, but our nerve endings don't touch.
Right.
So in that gap in the middle of it's called a synapse, and it gets flooded with dopamine when you feel good about something happening to you. The only problem is it doesn't last.
Right.
So you keep chasing high. It made me feel good for a minute. I'm going through these things right now. Well, let me pick up my telephone and see if I can get out of this instead of calling up Greg, or instead of Greg calling you, or Ken calling you and stuff.
Right.
That's so artificial. You can't survive doing things like that. We're meant to be in contact with one another.
Right. And the thing is, the desire to be liked or validated is so strong, it leads to risky behavior on social media. That you're willing to try. I don't know how many of these kids have been killed doing stupid challenges.
Right.
And
I mean,
the milk crate,
and it's not just kids. Yeah, exactly.
Are you serious? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just like, and as I said, it's not just kids; it's adults too. I've kept up. I think I sent this to you guys, but some of the stupid things that I've seen on the internet, I'm seeing on social media, this one woman, I don't know how old she is. She looked like she was in her 30s or her late 30s or early 40s. And I mean, a nice, attractive woman. She was an entrepreneur. She posted that back when her one of his friends was 17 years old, he approached her about her giving him some.
Wow.
And she said, "You a little too young. When you turn 25, come back and see me and I'll give you some."
Wow.
And she said, lo and behold, she heard a knock at her door years later. Here he is. And he says, "Hey, you told me when I turned 25, you was going to give me some." And he said, "Today's my 25th birthday and I'm here to collect." And she says, "Well, I'm a woman of my word." She says, "Yeah." She says, "So I'm a woman of my word. So I gave him some, you know." And then she talked about how her friends do the same thing. Now, regardless of all that, that's your business. What compelled you or what made you feel the need to post something like that on social media? But wait, there's more. A few days later, I see a video of this brother. He's with two of his friends. One of them's filming. These are two other brothers. They go to this apartment and knock on the door. And they're all young brothers. And another brother answers the door and he says, and the guy that knocks on the door says, "Man, let me see your phone." He said, "Why you need to see my phone?" He said, "Man, let me just see your phone." So, man, they get his phone. And he said, "See, you did." And he said, "No, man, it ain't what you think." And they proceed to stomp this brother, the three of them, okay, and post it on the social media. Now, why did they stomp this brother? Because this is the brother that slept with the guy's mom. And now, if that wasn't bad enough, he was stupid enough to record it. That's one thing, okay, because they big into that, you know. But anyway, then he posted it on social media.
Wow.
What did you think was going to happen? This is what I'm talking about, risky behavior.
But I know it's true. That sounds like you couldn't write a script that's that outcome that crazy.
I mean, but wait a minute. This is just one of the times we've been made aware of this situation. I guarantee it wasn't the first time, and it definitely won't be the last.
No.
But you got to ask yourself, how many incidents of homicides and assault have taken place behind stupidity like this? You know, but this is the type of stuff that's going on social media. Another thing I saw this week, a nice, attractive young lady felt the need to post pictures of her. She's got on a pair of blue jeans and no shirt, and she has her young son breastfeeding, and she posted the different pictures of him breastfeeding.
Let me add to this: he wasn't a baby.
Oh yeah, I know he was. You're right, kid.
He was like 2 or 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. We've lost our minds.
Oh man, without a doubt. But see, it's this type of risky behavior. Well, you place yourself at risk for one reason or another that has, dare I say, infected a lot of these people on social media, where they feel the need to post, if not ridiculous things, things that are just, just totally so insignificant that I'm not concerned about. I mean, I don't care what you had for breakfast. You don't need to show me a video of you cooking in the kitchen, you know, but it's like everybody's got to get out there and compete. And you look and you see, well, here's another example. I saw a video yesterday. It was one of the shorts or one of the reels. I can't remember. It had 5 million views and it wasn't 15 seconds long. And all that it was a guy trying to get into his pickup truck after his wife had driven it and the seat was too close to the steering wheel. And the caption read, what happens when you forget that your wife was the last one to drive the vehicle. And I'm like, it's got 5 million views. That's why I looked at it. I'm like, 5 million, what is this?
What is everybody attention to? Yeah.
Yeah, but 5 million people took 5 million and one, because I looked at it too. Took the time to look at a video that, you know, what was the point of this?
And that's 5 minutes that you can't get back.
Yeah, right. No, 15
Wait
seconds,
5
brother.
minutes.
There's 5
Brother,
million
imagine
people.
yourself
It only took 15 seconds. You right. No, it's 45 seconds because I watched it 3 times trying to figure out what was going on.
Right. It's baffled by it. You know, hey, you know, Facebook, the biggest one, even came to existence based on some shoddy, compromised thinking. And I'm sure Roger can espouse on this, especially ecclesiastically, but you know, Mark Zuckerberg went to Harvard. He was really good at coding and stuff, whatever. You know, they had secret societies that were there where only the elite get to come in because he was so good at what he was doing. You know, I'm wondering if socially he would have fit into this because he was so good at this, he probably got invited into the club. You know, and that's when they came up with this program, Face Mash. And he actually, you know, it's the Winklevoss twins.
Winklevoss twins. Yeah, he took their idea. They came to him.
They're the ones that came up with the platform.
Right.
To grow it, Zuckerberg broke up with his girlfriend. And in an attempt to get revenge after all this, he came up with this Face Mash stuff where, you know, he would allow college students like to compare the attractiveness of one student to another. This ain't old. It started with his mindset with Facebook, the biggest, most famous social media platform that we know of right now. That is very nefarious for that to have been the motivation for the origins of what he came up with after he stole it from the Winklevoss twins. But,
right.
You know, and that needs to be spoken of more and stuff. And, you know, and I knew about that story early on. I'm like, well, what type of person would do something like that? You know what kind of person? On such a platform so large that he would compromise someone else. Well, you have to be a very special person to do something like that. You know, almost on the brink of almost being a sociopath, you know?
Yeah.
That's what you have to look at it like. And I'm glad you brought that up, Ross, because I started to think about when I saw that movie, Social Network. It made me realize with that idea, you look at over time, things operate in cycles. And there's a pattern of things that don't change, and they just, let's take this thing to a whole nother level. And you keep feeding what people are feeding into. And the more, like you said, that dopamine drive kicks in because they need it all the time. They don't realize if you don't get time to shut your mind off from firing these synapses to cause these boosts of dopamine, that's where all the other issues go on in the body, because you don't have the opportunity for your body to come to a place of relaxation so everything can get restored. So everything pulls them in. And so he did that from a place of brokenness. And then doing that, he figures, oh, let me get revenge. And he has all his friends. Hey, what do you think about if we put these two faces together? What do you think about this? So all it is just you put it on these masks. And that's why you look at Facebook stories. Like you said, Greg, about people showing you what they have for breakfast and everything else. I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But when you're telling people too much about yourself, you have also got to understand witchcraft is real. And people have capacities to say certain things and speak over stuff. And you got to be careful about when you give so much of yourself out there, it leaves no mystery. Like if the women are doing this consistently and posting all their pictures and everything, then you wonder why. I don't know why I can't find somebody. I said, because you're telling too much about yourself. And men,
thank you.
Yeah. And men we've become much more wiser. And here's the other thing that I realized too, the circle of influence. If you don't have if women don't have a healthy circuit of influence, that's a red flag, because I tell you, man, look at the company, look how she responds to and how she speaks to family members, how she responds to friends, how her and her girls are out. Watch how they respond. If they're seeing it on Facebook story, you see it on Facebook post. That kind of that should ought to put an ideal in your head to say, I'm gonna throw I'm not gonna throw caution to the wind, because I gotta be careful. Based on what I'm seeing, this is something that I would have to deal with. Do I really want that? And so it's like it's a continuous cycle, and it goes from one generation and it continues. And the only way to put a halt to that is take a moment to prioritize you and create your own sense of worth. And, and I had put a post out on Facebook maybe about 2 weeks ago. And I said, God just simply want to be believed versus you always having to want to believe everything people say. God has been letting all these things happen because he's trying to get your attention to say, I just want to be believed. And if you just believe and seek my validation, I'll put you around the right like-minded people so you don't have to use this type of vice to find a sense of worth. Because over time, if you continue to do this, you build up all these additional proteins. And I was listening to a YouTube video last night with Torrey Roberts and Bishop T.D. Jakes talking about Torrey Roberts' book Balance. And he said you over time, you get all of these protein built up in the brain, which could lead to plaque on the brain where Alzheimer's sets in, dementia, and all these other issues because you're not feeding your mind with positive stuff because the negative stuff and all that sort of stuff, that does take a toll on your health physically because it causes everything to be a chemical imbalance in the brain. And now you have these health issues that show up later. You wonder how that happened. Is because you didn't deal with the things that you should have dealt with a long time ago.
Right. It does affect your health.
It does. Yep. And social media has exceeded, it's healthy to have some escapism in your life, but social media goes far beyond that to the point that it has become so addictive and a major part of people's lives outside of business, of course, that is a negative factor in so many people's lives. Look at what we've seen on social media. We've seen people murdered. We've seen people commit suicide. We've seen people get assaulted. I mean, and this is the type of stuff that is going on every day on social media. And people are just, like I said, well, it's just, it's like a train wreck. You just can't turn away. And that's where we've gotten. We've gotten to the point when it comes to social media that we can't turn away.
Right.
Very true.
Right.
And hey, like Greg, like you say, but wait, there's more. Okay. You got women out there stripping on social media.
Yeah.
Dancing, jiggling, and they're getting all these thousands of likes and getting paid for it. Okay.
But
getting killed because there was a woman down in Houston, was a stripper. She was communicating with this guy on her, I guess, OnlyFans site, and he came all the way from Florida to Houston and killed her. Yep. And then you had another guy. He put 2 tracking devices on a stripper's car to track her down, and he killed her. Because they're like, I invested all this money on social media. I'm not getting any return. I want something in return. And unfortunately, it was these women's lives.
We've all touched on, all these things that's going on. I just have to circle back to it that, people aren't, number one, they're not getting raised right at home in some cases. Yeah. They're not getting the love, the attention, and in some cases, the discipline that they need at home. It starts at home. None of us have perfect kids. We weren't perfect kids. We didn't have perfect parents. None of us. But at the end of the day, it was all about strong work ethic, strong family ties, strong sense of community, being concerned about one another. If I was down, I knew my brother was going to pick me up. If I was down, I knew my best friends were going to pick me up. Right. And again, all it took for me is, hey, knock on your door, pick up the phone. Yep. I don't need to be validated by 500 people. Too many people are relying on social media to validate their life. It's a comparison thing. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're trying to compete. They're trying to look and assimilate like these people. my dad talked about when he was, raising me during my life. Don't follow the trend. You don't need to follow the pack. You set your own trail. You be a trailblazer.
Amen.
Yeah, no, that's right.
That's why I never got a Jerry curl.
Yeah.
Well, I had the first one, but hey, I was one of the first. Okay.
Right.
But
yeah, I had the Gary Coleman hairstyle for a while.
But
that's
you know what I'm saying.
That we all got though. The four of us, I know that we all got that because I mean, Uncle Johnny and stuff. That's one thing that was always preached to me too. Mama would always say, "Well, if somebody goes to jump in the lake because everybody else is doing it, you gonna go do it too? Can you swim, boy?
Right?
I mean,
and you know what? Ross? Nowadays, these girls going to jump in the lake, and some of their mamas going with them.
Right. Some of their mamas there before they are.
Yep.
Right. So there's no substance in people. They're too busy again. And Roger, you alluded to this. Me and you have had these conversations a lot. Too many people are working on the outside and not working on the inside. Okay. Right. Now, I commend, Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, Simone Biles. They had to walk away. They said, hey, you know what? I got to back off. My mental health means more to me than what your opinion of me means. So they both, being as great at their sport, they're like, hey, hold on, I got to back off. I got to take a break from me. People don't know how to do that, and then when people, snap, we wonder, wow, why did that person snap? I.e., Antonio Brown. Okay, people need to pay attention to signs. And you gotta address it again at the root, and stop making excuses for it. Again, too many people make excuses for Antonio Brown, but I'm sorry, the brother went off. He was wrong, and that behavior should not be tolerated.
Right.
So,
wait a minute.
His mental health needs to be checked.
You talking about Mr. Antonio? There is no racism in America, Brown.
Yeah, the same guy who's dogging Colin Kaepernick. I'm like, dude, you're not in position, you don't have a clue, so somebody needs to check his mental health. And God forbid something happens to him, then people will be the first to say, well, yeah, we saw it coming, but what do people do? Nothing.
Yep. I don't even understand how his comments get any validation today with all of the stuff that he's done in the recent past anyway. And not to vilify him, he needs some help. He really does. And that's not obvious. They just look at it like it's a spectacle now, like, oh, he's entertaining us. And I've heard people make comments about, his mental health, but I mean, who's trying to help him? You got to brother.
But you got to remember this, and this is off topic, but you got to remember that being a coon pays big bucks.
Yes, it does.
And like you said, Ross, you hear that, he's entertaining us. Yeah, especially if he's talking against his own race or his own people. Oh, that pays. They love coons like that. It's a bunch of them running around loose now.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's for certain. So
you look at Terry Crews. He pleading his case on social media after being called a coon. But he apologized twice, both of them half-heartedly, in my opinion. But he's still the toast of the town.
Right.
Still got him in Hollywood, being popular. So it's, like I said, there's a lot of people that see that and say, guess what? I'm gonna follow the coon path.
Right.
Because I can get paid.
Right. Get paid. And that's another thing that goes on. I don't want to get too far off topic with this, but another thing that goes along with that too and stuff with Terry Crews and others who act like him, they're emasculated at times. You're in this Hollywood setting and somebody grabs you in your privates and stuff, whatever, and your first response is to say, oh no, he touched me, and you're a big grown man. Come on. Serious?
I'm a victim, me too.
You, and he's from Flint. That's what really disappointed me. He's from Flint. This emasculation of men and stuff, whatever, that's another thing. That's another subject matter right there. But you got men doing some things that don't make them look like men, decisions that they make and stuff that come out of their mouths. But I just don't get that. And then it gets
Well,
back to
Ross-
why I was needing for everybody to see it. So,
Well, Ross,
Very.
you just touched on something very important. And me and Greg, we've talked about this. Men are not being men nowadays.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
That's an understatement.
Ooh,
So,
ooh, everywhere, too, boy.
and I'm going to be honest. And so I'm just going to voice what I got to say.
Mm-hmm.
We got to start. It's going to start with us to start taking back the community, to start educating, and to even, tell these young ladies, stop shaking your ass on social media, okay? Don't nobody care you got on booty shorts and you wiggling all around. Nobody care about that. If you want to be a stripper, go to the strip club. The second point is stop letting other people validate who you are. You are
Right.
who you are. Be
Right.
proud of who you are. Stop worrying about what 500 other people got to say.
Right.
Okay?
Damn. Yep.
Right.
One of the things that I mentioned when I was working with some young adults when I was with Job Corps, and you just brought up a really good point, Kent. And I just thought about it, and I tell people, I said, you will attract exactly how you see yourself.
Yep.
Yep.
Because if you're broken, you're going to attract broken.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you might, as though you just somehow that relationship or that connection didn't go well, is because there's something still inside of you. Really got to take homage to and say, let me work on me first, because there's some things that a lot of people are afraid. Like, Michael Jackson, he made that song "Man in the Mirror" for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Listen very carefully to the lyrics. Talked about, you have to look at the guy in the mirror, and even the Word of God says, I think it's the Old Testament, talking about how a man looks in the mirror, but when he walks away, he forgets what he looks like. How many people are truly afraid to really look in the mirror at who they see? And if you're not really ready to accept or love the person that you see in the mirror, it's impossible to attract someone or be with somebody who has the same mindset as you do. And I think I've also seen where the validation comes from the fact of not just what they're not getting at home. And it's a lot of it has to do with, where's my sense of belonging in a society that everybody is trying to keep up? They're trying to, that's why everybody is in a hurry to be wealthy. I can't tell you how many times I would sit there and look at YouTube videos. I'm trying to watch, your pastor Ken Bishop Jakes or Dr. Darius Daniels or something like that.
Right.
And then a commercial comes on. Oh, I'm going to show you how I'll help you get there to get the money that you need. I said, oh my gosh.
Right.
I said, you all, it's so interesting to me how they want to establish a connection and they want to talk to you about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And I had a gentleman that came to the college about 2 weeks ago. We had a minority business summit. And he has his own LLC in which he has his own enterprise and company where he is a motivational speaker, but he's also a mentor at the highest level, where people who are authors and prestigious public speakers, he coaches them. And I had a great conversation with him. He has to be probably in his 70s. And I'm telling you, this African-American man was so brilliant. He gave me such wonderful knowledge. He said to me, asked him, the other lady that was with me that I worked with, she said, can I have your business card? He said, I carry business cards. And she was like, really? You don't? He says, no. Because if it's meant for me, if you and I are meant to do business, then all I simply need is just your phone number, email address. Mm-hmm. Because business cards, you collect so many of them. But why not establish a healthy connection of rapport and let's just start communicating right now? Mm-hmm. Because he said, we spend too much time gathering all of these names and numbers and connecting on the social media accounts. What is really the significance of you connecting with me? because I look at it like professional season. If I don't see anybody, he says, I'll go to their page first and I look to see what they do for a living. And if what I see, what they do for a living doesn't line up with me, I don't accept it. I don't accept the connection.
Right.
Because at this point in my life, he says, what I'm trying to do, I have to get the like-minded people to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing that shares my asperities, I'm wasting my time. You're wasting your time. And I said all of that to say, so many people are getting into these connections and contacts and having 6 or 8 or 9 or 10,000 followers. And for what? What is your significance of you having all these people? And yet, are you creating any form of wealth or exposure? What is it really do for you?
Exactly.
And people, young ladies especially, miss the point because it's things or appointments on an Instagram model's account. That's actually something else, and we know what that is. And so, the unfortunate is, I tell young men especially, when you see all of that, if there's nothing left to mystery, you're wasting your time because she'd rather show the whole world what she's lacking. And I'm gonna say this real quick before I be quiet, so you guys can interject. Dr. Darius Daniels has a friend of his named Dr. Myron Golden, motivational speaker. I listened to this man do a workshop 2 Saturdays ago, and how he described the Garden of Eden and how God gave Adam and Eve all of this garden, but he said, "Don't touch what's in the middle of the garden, which is, the tree." Like he said, "Don't touch that tree." So they had access to all of the other great things in the garden. But what they did was, focus on what they have that God said you can't have. And if young people, young adults, even people our age who are still trying to not be grateful for all of what you do have, stop focusing on the lack, because when you keep focusing on the lack, that's going to be your downfall. And because you lack this validation that you're seeking from people that you are going to never meet, they don't know anything about you. I also am cautious this too. The people that comment, a lot of them are waiting to see, I'm going to put the best comment out there. And that's also a poor aspect of how you really don't care or pay mind to what somebody puts out there.
Right.
So, I just want to interject that part.
Well, and Roger, you have to understand that you are one of the discerning people that, like me, you want to use social media to your advantage. Where it's something positive. And I'm going to tell you this, there's a seedy side to LinkedIn, believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it.
I've seen it.
When we did Family Feud, Venus and I both got hits. She got hit from men, I got hit from women. That out of the blue, like, who are these strange people? What? And we were talking about it, and it's like, wow. And LinkedIn is a soft version of Facebook, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Because when I've seen so many of these these women, especially, that are being these life coaches, they're showing they're on the beach and they're posting photos that they're so happy and everything. I says, deep down inside, I question whether or not if that's really something that they're motivated by, or is it a cover up for something that they're not willing to show their transparency on?
Right.
Some, I gotta say, have been authentic because they shared their story, but there's some in which I'm like, it's just kind of like, what is your intentions? And some people I had to not accept on LinkedIn because I don't see where the commonality is. You're in Japan. I've had people speak to me from Nigeria and Swahili.
France.
Like, I don't even know. France. I don't even know what you just asked me, so I can't connect with you.
Right.
I don't understand that language. I'm sorry. I don't know who you are.
Well, let me bring this back home so we can move on. I did want to touch on Kent, when you were talking about, you made me think of something when you were talking about these women and what they're doing and shaking their behinds, all that. And, it made me think about Kevin Samuels, who passed this week. Obviously, social media influencer. I did listen to him. I mean, I can't say I disagree with a lot of what he said. I might disagree with his tone and the way he presented it. But this, with his passing, I'm not going into detail, with his passing, I've never seen so much hatred of people, particularly women, celebrating someone's death the way they've been doing it on social media. And you talked about men being emasculated and not stepping up or stepping in, to protect women, but also standing up to women, period. Some of them get run over women, but
I'm talking about now too.
Yeah, it's I'll say this. The social, we've pretty much, stated well that social media influence had a tremendous negative impact on our community. It's unfortunate that it has resulted in at least one of these suicides of these two women, and I pray for them to rest in peace and that their families be comforted through this. And I say, hey, the same for Kevin. I forgot his name. Just that Kevin. Thank you, Kevin Samuels and his family. Man, it's just unfortunate. And you just have to do all you can to make it clear, particularly these younger kids, that social media is not the answer. And you are enough. It's that simple. It's just that simple. Okay. Right. And that's all I want to say about that.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Uncle Greg Show podcast. Be sure that you like, share, and subscribe this podcast on all social media platforms. And if you have any comments, feel free to email. The links and details for all social media platforms and email address for the Uncle Greg Show podcast are contained in the details section of each podcast. Thank you for listening and be safe.